Hi, thanks for listening to our Valentines HR webinar where we're going to be discussing relationships in the workplace. So just very quickly, before we get started, I just want to give you a little bit of background about who Morpay are. So we're a trusted market leader in payroll and HR solutions for UK businesses. Predominantly what we do is payroll and HR, but you can see from that wheel image on the screen there that there's various other things that we do. So things such as HR and employment law advice, health and safety consultation, background checking, auto-enrollment, employee benefits, and various other things. So if you do want to find out a bit more about what we do, if you just want to give us a call on the number on the screen or visit our website, which is morpay.co.uk. Okay, so now I'm going to pass you over to your presenter, who will be Andrew Weir.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's my pleasure to be presenting to you today the Valentines HR webinar. I've been flabbergasted by the number of people that we've got on today's webinar, so it's great to see many of our customers and other non-customers attending the webinar to see what we've got to say around our topical Valentine's HR webinar. So welcome, everybody. Just a little bit about me. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. So I look after or oversee the advice line and the advocacy teams here at Morpay. So the advice line is the employment law advice line, giving customers 365 days, 24 hours a day access to an employment law support line whereby the team give our clients guidance and support on their legal obligations in employment law, and also our advocacy team based across the UK with UK and Republic of Ireland coverage, dealing with all sorts of employment tribunal matters from wages disputes up to the rather more complex world of discrimination matters and TUPE, etc. So what are we going to cover in today's session? So if we can just have a look at the agenda. We're going to, first of all, have a little meander through a bit of forthcoming legislation. So this area, we're not going to be specifically looking at the webinar content, but we're going to be looking at what's coming up in the near future. We're going to touch on something that's already just come in and things that you need to be aware of from an employer's point of view. Then we're going to get into the meat and drink of the webinar. We're going to have a look at the legislative background that relates to relationships at work. Then we're going to move away from that legislative background and get into, okay, well, what do we need to be thinking about from a policy point of view, company policy point of view as regards relationships at work. And then we're going to delve into some real-world examples, look at the types of issues that the advice line here at Morpay grapple with when we're advising our customers on a day-to-day basis on this and other sorts of matters of an employment law nature. So just having a look at forthcoming legislation then. So first of all, we've got a piece of legislation that's already came in this month on the 1st of February, and that's corporate manslaughter. So what we have here are some new sentencing guidance been introduced for courts dealing with corporate manslaughter, health and safety and food safety offences. This provides new guidance and sees a huge increase in the level of fines that can potentially be applied to organisations convicted of such offences. So noting there's a ceiling of as much as £20 million can be applied there. So just to touch on that really from a Morpay point of view, we have a health and safety team here at Morpay that provides health and safety support and guidance to our customers across the UK. So if you're not with us for health and safety, please do give us a call and perhaps have a chat with us about how we can help you from a health and safety point of view. Now, the next two topics, a bit more in my area of the knowledge, which is national minimum wage and increase in income tax personal allowance. So we're going to be running some future webinars on these. They're up and coming, so please do visit our website, www.morpay.co.uk, and also have a look us up on LinkedIn. And there you'll find the access to log in and register for these webinars that we're going to be running in the very near future. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is the national living wage. So you've probably heard about this in the news, and this is going to apply to workers aged 25 and above, and is set at £7.20 an hour. It's an increase of 50p on top of the current rate for minimum wage, and that's going to apply from the 1st of April of this year. As I say, we're going to be doing a webinar on the national living wage, so please do look out for that. The next one is increased in income tax personal allowance, applying from the 6th of April 2016, increasing to £11,000 for the lower rate, with the higher tax threshold being increased to £43,000. So just on that, know that more pay support our clients in payroll matters as well. So if you've got any queries around that, please do give us a call and we'll be happy to give you some support on that. So let's just have a look at the legislation background. We'll just have a little gentle wander through the legislation background, specifically relating to relationships at work. Well, the first one is the Human Rights Act. Probably many of you will have heard of this, but specifically within the Human Rights Act, Article 8 of the Convention gives everybody the right to respect for his or her private and family life. Well, how does that square with matters in the workplace, relationships at work? That's what we're going to be looking into today. So let's just have a look at the next piece of legislation that relates to relationships at work, which is marital discrimination. So, of course, this relates to civil partnerships and same-sex marriages. You may not be aware of this. It's essentially defined as treating another person less favourably than he or she would treat a single person on the ground that they are married or in a civil partnership. So essentially, please don't be treating people differently on the basis that they're married or in a civil partnership. It's important to know that because, of course, it relates to relationships at work. Some employers do have people in the workplace that are married or in a civil partnership. So it's important to be aware of that from an employer's point of view. And then finally, we're just going to touch on the next piece of legislation that relates to this particular topic of relationships at work, which is sexual harassment. So this comes from the Equality Act, and basically it relates harassment in a sexual sense is unwanted physical, verbal or non-verbal conduct related to a person's sex, which has, and here's the emphasis, the purpose or effect of violating a person's dignity or creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment for them. So why the reference to the purpose or effect? Well, what's important for employers to know here is when we've got allegations of sexual harassment going on, what the employer needs to be thinking about is not just what happened, when, who said what. What we need to be also looking at is the effect of those things on the aggrieved individual. So how did they feel about those things? What was their reaction to that behaviour by the other person? This, of course, this matter of harassment also relates to other protected characteristics, not just sex. It relates to, for example, sexual orientation. So, of course, you may have a couple who are in the workplace who are in a civil partnership and they suffer harassment as a result of their sexual orientation. And harassment and claims of harassment can come out of those facts. But knowing that the most important thing is that employers are focused not just on what's happened, but the effect of those things on the individual that's been aggrieved. So in summary, as we're touching on legislation, the most important thing for everybody to know is that there are some rather complex and very potentially expensive areas of legislation here should employers get dealing with relationships in the workplace wrong. So how are we going to deal with this as an employer? What are the things that we need to be considering from an employer's point of view? Well, the first thing is, what are we going to do from a policy point of view? So some policy considerations here. First of all, the first question is, does a business actually want to have a policy within the workplace that relates to relationships at work? So yeah, that's simply a yes or no answer. Do I want something that defines a relationship, a definition of relationships covered in the workplace? Do I want to define what a relationship is? Do I want to be requiring staff to conduct themselves in a manner consistent with their role and duty at all times? I suspect the answer to that one for most employers is yes. Do I want to require staff to declare existing or new relationships from the appropriate manager? And do I want to put in place the necessary provision so that a non-partner manager conducts appraisals and oversees financial matters such as approving expenses and things such as this. And equally, as an employer, do I want to require applicants for jobs to declare relevant relationships when they're applying for roles within my organisation? These are some real key questions that employers need to be asking themselves. And if the majority of the answers to those questions is yes, you need a policy on relationships at work, and Morpay can assist you in compiling and introducing that to your organisation and your employees. What are the benefits of having such a policy as an employer within the workplace? Well, the first one, internally, it avoids conflicts of interest in relation to matters of decisions. So has somebody met or achieved their objectives as far as an appraisal is concerned? And equally, it deals with conflicts of interest in relation to fiscal financial payments. So as I say, expenses and overtime rates, etc. And equally, from an employer's point of view and your brand towards your employees, promotes consistent, transparent and fair management within your organisation. What are the benefits externally? Well, it's to protect confidentiality in the interests of the business in relation to both customers and suppliers. So there are benefits in having a policy on relationships in the workplace, and it's very much up to an employer as to whether they want to introduce something like this for their organisation or not. There is no legal requirement to have a policy on relationships at work. But what I will say is, bearing in mind what I mentioned around sexual harassment, it's very important for an employer to have an equality and diversity policy within their employee handbook. So this is a policy which sets out specifically the company's expectations on the matter of equality and diversity, what they expect from their employees, and certainly what they do not expect from their employees on this matter of equality and diversity, which generally, when we're talking about relationships at work, rears its head in the form of claims of harassment. And I'm going to talk about that in a bit more detail when we look at the real-world examples. But from a equality and diversity policy, the fundamental aspect from an employer's point of view is, firstly, having that policy in place, but secondly, having that policy living and breathing within your organisation. Well, how do I do that? Well, the easiest way to do that as an employer is make sure, in addition to having a policy and in addition to making sure that that policy is distributed to your employees, ideally through your employee handbook, and ensuring that everybody's signed up to that, making sure that on an annual basis you're undertaking equality and diversity training. Now, there's lots of ways of doing that. It can be in paper form, or indeed a lot of employers these days are doing online training, and Morpay can provide you with support and assistance in online training for equality and diversity. So if that's of interest to you, do give us a call and we'll be happy to talk that through with you in terms of how we can assist. But the most important thing, as I say, is having an equality and diversity policy in place that lives and breathes within your organisation. And you're only going to evidence the second aspect if you can show and demonstrate on a good level of evidence that you are engaging with your employees annually on equality and diversity training, and indeed that your employees are passing that training. So that's the most important thing from a policy point of view when we're talking about relationships in the workplace as a whole. Making sure that if you want a policy in place for relationships at work, you've got the relevant policy in and it's well drafted, but also making sure you've got that equality and diversity policy in there as well that's living and breathing within your workplace. So we've thought about the policy. What about some real-world examples? What are the types of things that we grapple with here at Morpay when we're advising our customers? Invariably, when we're talking about relationships in the workplace, it's not the relationships that have been ongoing for many years and are solid. It's generally the issues crop up at the very beginning of the relationship, love's young dream, and certainly at the end of the relationship, when the relationship breaks up. So let's look at the types of issues that can crop up in both situations. So first of all, the beginning of the relationship, love's young dream. What are the types of things that can happen? Well, excessive emails to one another. If you identify that and have a discussion with your employees about their excessive emails, you may see some excessive internet usage. So perhaps they're going online and sending instant messages to one another via various social media forums. You may experience some lateness and sickness absence patterns related to two particular individuals within your organisation. And so these are the sorts of things that tend to crop up when we're dealing with the love young dream situation when the relationship has just begun. The other sorts of matters that crop up are generally when a relationship breaks up within the workplace and towards the end of the relationship. And what can happen there? Well, again, you know, excessive emails perhaps to and from each other, but perhaps the content of those emails isn't well received from one person or another. And what can happen there? Yes, that's right. You get claims of harassment coming out of the woodwork through grievance processes. So again, important from an employer's point of view that you've got that policy in place, that it's living and breathing within your organisation, and that you're dealing with the issues that as they crop up. So what are the sorts of things and ways that you can tackle these things, first of all? Well, first of all, the most important thing is let's have a discussion. So if you identify that you've got employees sending excessive emails, excessive internet usage, lateness and sickness patterns are arising, have a discussion with both employees, identify the issue, make sure you've got a file note of that, and coach them as to what's expected with reference to your company policy that might be in place. Now, what if after that, they're not taking heed of that encouragement and the behaviour continues? Well, then we're into correcting their behaviour and we're moving into disciplinary matter there. So what we're talking about here is making sure that we're treating employees consistently, and that's the most important point here. If we're moving into corrective behaviour and we're moving into the disciplinary field, then we need to ensure that we're treating our employees consistently. And there's been a recent case been reported in the press of a very well-known football club where the female sales and events manager rejected the advances of a first-team player, but unfortunately those advances continued. Now, when the female sales and events manager complained to the club's chief executive is apparently alleged to have told her, rather bluntly I might add, your problem is that you're too attractive to work in football. Goodness me. Now, the lady left the club and the player escaped any form of censure whatsoever. The lady actually brought a claim against the club in the High Court and won her case against the club for sex discrimination and sexual harassment. And it's, as I say, it's recently been reported in the news. So the most important thing here is consistency, making sure that we're dealing with employees consistently on the facts. So, of course, if we've got a situation where we've got excessive internet usage, excessive emails from both parties, and it's all consensual, then we really need to be looking at coaching both individuals, and equally, if that doesn't take heed, that we move into corrective action for both of them. But, of course, if we've got a situation where one party is saying, hang on a minute, I'm not liking this sort of content that's being sent to me, usually in the situation where the relationship's broken up, then we're moving into the realms of harassment and really just reminding everybody as to what that is. That's unwanted physical, verbal, non-verbal conduct related to a person's sex, which has the purpose or effect of violating the person's dignity or creating an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment for them. So what are we doing there? Well, first of all, we're making sure that we take the appropriate action with the perpetrator of that unwanted physical or non-verbal unwanted physical, verbal or non-verbal conduct, making sure that we're taking the appropriate and reasonable on-the-facts action with that employee, and equally making sure that the person that's aggrieved by that action is protected and is looked after. So, of course, important, rather than delving into intricate facts on these, that you've got a good level of support from an employment law provider to guide you through the myriad of issues that can come up in these sorts of situations. So generally, for relationships at work, what do we tend to deal with? We tend to deal with matters that arise when love's young dream is just cropping up, and equally we deal with issues when the relationship's broken up. But the main message is make sure you've got your policies in place, make sure you've certainly got your equality and diversity policy in place that lives and breathes within your organisation, and finally, make sure that you're dealing with every employee reasonably and consistently simply on the facts as you know them. So that's it for the webinar presentation today. It's been my pleasure to present to you. If you'd like to, have you got any questions or would like to speak to us further about how we can help you, please do give us a call for any further information or guidance on how this subject or any other could affect your business. Give us a call on the number on the screen, 0845 073 0260, and we'll be happy to have a conversation with you and discuss with you how we might be able to assist. Absolute pleasure presenting to everybody this afternoon. Thanks very much for your attendance, and I wish you all a very good day. Many thanks.
Thanks for that, Andy. So just before we do wrap up for the day, I just want to take you through a couple more pieces of content that you can get from us for free from our website. So our Employment Law and HR Legislation Guide summarises the legislation changes and any forthcoming legislation. So that's updated on a monthly basis. We have a Payroll Legislation Guide as well, again, but that illustrates payroll legislation. A Payroll Tax Back card, which is a new one, there's a new one due to be released in March. So if you do want to sign up for that one, if you just want to register your details and we can get it posted out to you. Now, anyone that's already a customer of ours, you will get this posted out to you. But for those of you who aren't a current customer, if you would just like to send through your address and we can get it sent out to you. So here's just a couple more ways that you can connect with us. So we are on Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter. There is also our phone number and an email address. So as Andy said, if you do have any questions or do need some further advice, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. So again, thank you everyone for listening today.